Welcome to Finlos Lives. Before I begin this episode, I just want to thank Eva for always being willing to listen to my ideas and be honest with feedback. I have a tendency to want to present projects in their final form for maximum impact and forget that all creative processes are iterative and are best improved with feedback and revision when necessary. This is something that I taught as a writing instructor and something that I should work to follow in my own creative practice. As a result, this episode is presented a little differently than I had originally intended. I hope it has something worthy to offer you. And while I'm on the subject of editing, I do edit podcast episodes for brevity and comfort. That is to say that I remove unnecessary empty air or silence, as well as annoying verbal tics like ums and tongue clicks. I've gotten pretty good at not producing them to begin with, but they do still show up from time to time, and I get rid of them when they interfere with ease of listening. However, I do not change the meaning of ideas, rearrange the order of words or phrases, or otherwise attempt to create something that was not originally captured. So while I will remove redundancy, bad ideas, mediocre humor, or strange mouth noises, I won't try to go in after the initial session and add something into the recording that wasn't already there. What that means, though, is that sometimes I will have to add a brief note like this to clarify an idea or to add some nuance to a point that may not sound as graceful as I would have liked. In this episode, I talk about body image and feeling fat, and I recognize that fat is a dangerous and loaded word because it means different things to different people. I hope that as I work through the episode, it's clear that I'm mostly speaking to the idea of fatness as a cultural construct rather than any specific biological definition, which are too often themselves linked to racist and out-of-date standards. I also do not intend to blame anyone for my own health and weight issues. Capitalism, culture, and media consumption are all real and play into concepts of beauty and how I and we view ourselves. But I am also a person who is able to make healthier choices, have those choices at my disposal, and I've repeatedly not made them. The other thing that I don't speak to very much this time is the commodity of time and how much of a privilege the time to exercise, to sleep, or to relax can be. But please know that these ideas are baked into the topic as you listen. Today, I'm going to be talking about something fairly personal. I guess everything about this show is personal, right? But this one is, it's something that I think a lot of people have the potential to relate to, and that's feeling fat. And this is really coming up for me a lot lately, mostly because I've put on a lot of weight in the past few years. Interestingly enough, I had a medical scare about 3 years ago, and one of the realizations from that scare is that I really needed to quit drinking for many different reasons. For my emotional well-being, definitely for my physiological well-being. And so I quit drinking, and I thought at least that logic would dictate that reducing that amount of calories, we don't really drink soda, and removing those calories would make losing weight fairly easy. But since I quit drinking, and this is in the past 3 years, I've actually put on about, I'm doing the quick math, 35 pounds. And it's quite a bit. It's more than anything, it's concerning for my health. But I also can't deny the reality of just feeling uncomfortable and not looking the way that I want to look. So recently, I had to prepare to go on a trip for work. And of course, as I'm planning for what to pack, inevitably you have to go into the closet and decide which clothes to wear. And it's been over a year since I've been in the classroom, and so I haven't really put on much of my formal work attire in the past 12 months. So it was a bit of emotionally draining, frustrating process to one by one not be able to choose the items of clothing that I would feel most comfortable in for stylistic reasons or just for whatever I wanted because they didn't fit. And it wasn't just they didn't fit, like they were a little tight. Most of these things just didn't fit. So it meant that I had to go shop for clothes, which is something I enjoy doing. Actually, I like shopping. I like clothes, but it's never a good feeling to have to expand one's wardrobe because to match the expansion of one's body. Again, I'm not like a snob or anything, but I do take some pride in dressing well according to my own sense of fashion and my own aesthetic. And it was a little frustrating because I'm not willing to get rid of clothes now because I am determined to lose weight and get back to be able to wear those clothes again. So it's like on one hand you're wasting, or the other hand you're wasting, right? You're either going to waste the clothes that you have to get rid of because they're too small, or you're going to end up wasting the clothes that you have to buy now because they're too big. And it's just a roller coaster. But that's just the shopping. It's hard to acknowledge that I care and that you probably care at some level how others perceive you. I definitely care how others perceive me, maybe more than I should. Not just because of not just in terms of my attitude and my behaviors and my performance as a professional and as a friend and as an acquaintance and all of those things, like interpersonally. I do care how I look. I do care that my clothes fit me well and flatter me in ways that don't make me look frumpy, or that I'm not really caring how I look, or that is just like a sack fitting over me. Like these are very hard truths to grapple with because I want to be sensitive to the variety of shapes and sizes of people and not identify any one shape or size as what one might call normal, right? Because there is no normal. But I do know that for me, there is something that feels normal and good to me. And beyond the shame and the loathing and the obsessive looking in a mirror because this piece of flesh is touching this other piece of flesh, which is just terrible. But it genuinely is uncomfortable. My body right now is uncomfortable. And that is the feeling that I think is a warning sign. That is the feeling that tells me that something has to change, that where I am right now is not good. It's not only not good for my body, it's not good for my mental state, because it becomes a preoccupation. It becomes something that I worry about, and I do worry that people are judging me and that people are making assumptions about my lifestyle and the type of life that I live based upon my physical appearance, because I can't say that I've never done the same towards others. And so that's just a reality that I try to be honest with myself about. It's interesting because I work 100% remotely from home, and so I'm very familiar with the faces of my coworkers, my teammates. It is really interesting to meet them face to face for the first time. Some of them have met each other in prior years as we do these annual meetings, but this, for me, this is the first time seeing anyone in my team in person. And so it's a really interesting experience to check the reality against the assumptions and the preconceptions that I may have carried about what they would look like. And it's not meant to be a mean thing, and it's not meant to be a sort of judgmental process. It's just a fun curiosity. What does this person look like in real life? And again, I know that they're just thinking the same thing about me. And so there's inevitably a moment where there's that doubt, or that maybe, is it a disappointment? Maybe it's just insecurity. Of course it's insecurity. It's not that I want people to think, to be like, damn, he's looking good, but it wouldn't hurt. But I want people to appreciate the value that I put in myself. And I become very harmfully, overly concerned with that sort of disconnect between how I think I should look and how I actually look. And then, there's the irrational, at least this is for me, that anxiety about, is the way that I see myself how I actually look? And that's such a crazy making thought, because self-perception is such a fallible tool. It's such an inaccurate way to measure ourselves. And so, yes, I can look in the mirror and see my reflection and see what I look like. But how much am I making sure that I turn a certain way, or that I only look in the mirror when I know that I'm wearing this particular outfit or something like that, just to make sure that what I'm seeing is the most flattering? Because let me tell you, we have Chromecast on our TV, and so sometimes when the screen is on, it just like cycles through our photo albums, and every now and then this picture comes up and I'm like, Jesus, is that what I really look like? Like, that is not how I see me. That is not the face that I see in the mirror. And if that's what other people are seeing, then I'm worried, because that's not me. I'm not worried about if they think I'm ugly. I'm not worried if they find me attractive. It's just, that does not look like me. That doesn't feel like me. I'm not supposed to look like that. That is not how my body feels. And that's a scary feeling. And so some of what I'm talking about here is fat-phobia. And a definition that I got from the Boston Medical Center defines fat-phobia, or being anti-fat, as being the implicit and explicit bias of overweight individuals that is rooted in a sense of blame and presumed moral failing. Being overweight and or fat is highly stigmatized in Western or white culture. Anti-fatness is intrinsically linked to anti-blackness, racism, classism, misogyny, and many other systems of oppression. And so, like, I'm not making the argument that I am an oppressed person. I don't think that I am. I don't feel targeted. I don't feel shamed by people in the world about my appearance. This is entirely, for me at least, entirely something that is an internal struggle that I deal with, but fat phobia is real. And what I do feel is that idea of blame and presumed moral failing, because that is very much a real aspect of this. People don't think that we should be overweight. Like, that's a failing, that's a flaw, that is a sign of something wrong or out of control, or an addiction, or anything. And it goes both ways. If you're too skinny, is it an eating disorder? Whatever you want to call it. Like, these are deeply rooted, acculturated forms of shaming and accusations of moral failing. Like, you are morally wrong for looking the way that you look. And again, I'm not claiming that degree of intensity, and I'm definitely not rising to the level of the intersectional oppressiveness of what people of color or the queer communities who also happen to be large-bodied experience. Like, that is on an entirely different level. So some of this I'm trying to figure out. I'm trying to dissect what that feeling is. What is that feeling of wrongness? Because as I'm sitting here in my chair, I'm leaning forward, and I've already described this once, but there are, and forgive the descriptions here, but there are pieces of my body touching other pieces of my body because I'm leaning forward. And there are folks, myself included, who have sensory issues where when one piece of skin touches another piece of skin, it feels awkward, it feels uncomfortable. So like if your toes feel sticky, or some people click their fingers or whatever because they just don't like that sensation. I have that sort of sensory sensitivity when my skin touches itself. So as I'm leaning forward now into this microphone, I feel my chest sagging and touching the top of my stomach. And it's a very clear, distinct, uncomfortable sensation that I'm sitting with. And I'm leaning into it because normally, as soon as I would recognize it, I would straighten my back or I would adjust my shirt. But I'm leaning into the feeling of the skin folding upon itself and the slow accumulation of moisture, and it's driving me crazy. But even that, okay, that's something that's manageable. I can deal with that. I feel pain. I can feel my sternum being pressed as I put on weight. My weight primarily sits in my torso, so I have a large a round belly, and my chest gets just bigger and bigger, and so I feel my sternum expanding as I put on weight. And so there are sometimes, if I take a deep breath and my chest expands, it becomes uncomfortable because the extra mass of the fat buildup on my stomach is pushing upwards, and it makes it uncomfortable. I have very painful foot health as it is, because as a runner, I developed heel spurs, but adding on 35-40 pounds on top of the already sensitive feet, my feet cry every morning when I first get out of bed, even when I stretch. I'm clumsier. I mean, I'm a kind of clumsy person to begin with, but I'm clumsier because I'm taking up more space than I should. And so my sense of spatial orientation is altered. I add on top of that the fact that the way that clothes are designed, they're not comfortable most of the time to begin with, but all the money to the person who invented, stretchy jeans. But most clothes just don't feel comfortable. To be a large person, it just means that you're getting more and more fabric, and it's just hot and it's uncomfortable, and everything about this conversation is just making me loathe myself more and more, because I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't be like this. This is not who I am. I look at the pictures of me when Eva and we went whole hog healthy, and I understand the lack of logic of that statement, a healthy hog, but we were paleo, very strictly paleo for a good long while, 5-6 years maybe, and We exercised like clockwork every day. I was jogging 5 miles a day. Eva and I would walk 2 miles a day together, at least. We didn't eat any processed foods, or we avoided as much processed foods as we could. No grains, no white root vegetables like potatoes and things like starchy vegetables, no rice. And I lost, I'm now almost exactly where I was at my heaviest after my mother died. And I had a health scare at that time too. It gave me the shock that I needed, and I got on board with Eva, and I lost 70 pounds. I got down to 180 pounds, and that was too skinny for me. I didn't, that was too far, but my body changed, and I felt good. I felt comfortable. It's not just about a confidence that does come with feeling good. I felt good. Like, my clothes fit comfortably. My skin felt right. I felt like this is the way that my body is supposed to feel. And so I'm trying to understand what these messages are that my body sends to me. How do I know that what I'm feeling is that my body just doesn't feel right? Because there are people for whom being larger or smaller is not a discomfort, and in fact, that is who they need to be to fully embody their identity. And this is not about having a singular vision, and that's part of the problem, I think, is that, are you male, female? Are you trans? Are you non-binary? Are you cishet? It doesn't, all of these different sort of gender considerations, they complicate what the rules are supposed to be and what the understandings of what we're supposed to look like, and it gets messy, and because we have these ideas of who we are based upon who we feel we should be in conflict with the identities that we're given as children, it's no wonder that we're so confused. It really is no wonder. And so we're going to get a little messy here in terms of the complexity of all of these things. And, I hate to bring some of these more, political or philosophical, whatever you want to call it. But the reality is that we live under capitalism. We live in a supposed capitalist society, which does great harm to sense of self and identity. And to be frank, I think that most people living under capitalism likely carry some kind of eating disorder or body image discongruence or combination of both of those things, because the expectations of who we are and what we should look like are shaped by really complex and interrelated factors. Factors like the things our families of origin tell us, and sometimes how they support us, sometimes how they inadvertently or intentionally shame us, or the messages and standards we receive from the media and culture. I mean, we are constantly exposed to things labeled as beautiful, and it is in our nature to compare ourselves against those things. That is just the way that our brains work. We like to categorize and we like to compare. And so all of the differences are very clear in our minds at all times. And sometimes those differences make us more beautiful and more interesting and makes us stand out. Other times those differences make us feel wrong and they make us feel different. And sometimes the genetic predispositions we inherit, and those predispositions against which we have to struggle, like if we're just prone to being heavier, or if we have inherited a disorder of some kind, which just makes us more prone to either being difficult to gain weight or difficulty losing weight, or some predispositions from which we gain ease. There are people who just have naturally high metabolisms, or who process sugar or protein or carbohydrates better and more efficiently. And for them, staying healthy just seems like a walk in the park. They get up, they eat their bowl of cereal, they go to work, they come home, and life is easy, And I know it's more complicated than that, but you get what I'm saying. We have the constant chatter and intermixed messages of friends and acquaintances, most of whom are trying their best to make us feel better about ourselves, which is truly generous and kind. But it doesn't always match with reality. And some people don't. Some people are honest, and some people just want you to know the truth. And some people are mean, and they want to hurt you. And all of these mixed messages make it really confusing. And then, of course, we have the voices of scientific authority. Most immediately in our lives, our doctors, and that's, of course, if we have the privilege of access to a doctor. And these authorities, they're telling us what we should be doing more or less of, and how our bodies should be functioning, and why they sometimes don't. And then finally, of course, our own inner voices of regret and disappointment and disapproval and shame and guilt, and occasionally, on a good day, a grudging acceptance of who we are in that moment. When that happens, that's a good feeling, but some days it's really hard. But when we consider all of these things, it's no wonder that so many people struggle to achieve and maintain a generally healthy biology through generally healthy means. And of course, beyond the logical understanding of what health is and why we should pursue health, there's often much more powerful, if less reasonable, pursuit of the aesthetically pleasing, both what we find pleasing in others and, of course, in ourselves, so that we can meet the assumed expectation that others have for us based on our own limited and often flawed perspectives on beauty and what we want, and you see how this is a tragically circular bit of reasoning here, right? And of course, now I have to pause, and I encourage you to do the same. How have I approached what I view as beautiful and therefore continued or alleviated the harm of fat phobia? How do I play into that system? How do I continue the harm? What messages am I giving to my children? What have I told my students in my classroom? How am I making sure that I am not perpetuating the messages of shame and guilt and of moral failing that gets attached to ideas of beauty? That's hard. This makes me think, I remember, God, this is a long time ago. I used to watch as a kid in like middle school and into high school, the Learning Channel a lot. And I don't remember what the show was, but I remember there was a show that was like exploring the relationship between anthropology and biology. And in this episode, they were talking about the psychology of identity. And one segment had participants sorting themselves according to how they viewed themselves in terms of attractiveness. We can see this is a problematic, not truly scientific experiment. So these people, they looked at images of people of the opposite gender. These were hetero people. This is the 90s. And then they ranked those people who they were looking at from most to least attractive. There were various body types, various ethnicities, different skin tones. All of these different things were represented. I think it was a group of maybe 40 or 50 people. So you've got equal amounts of men and women, heterosexual, at least they identified as such. They're ranking themselves in terms of, on a scale from 1 to 10, in terms of their own personal attractiveness, and then ranking the members of the opposite gender in terms of attractiveness. And they have to assign each person a number from 1 to 20. Well, I'm sorry, yeah, from 1 to 10, if I'm remembering this accurately. 1 being the least attractive, 10 being the most attractive. And so a few interesting trends showed up. One, the women disproportionately ranked themselves less attractive, and the men disproportionately ranked themselves as more attractive, meaning that there wasn't what would be an appropriate bell curve representing the entire range of attractiveness on a scale from 1 to 10, which shocking, right? Women think that they're less attractive, men think that they're more attractive. And the last step of this experiment, which is, again, it's really interesting. It's totally not scientific, but still just interesting to watch. They put both sides in a room together, and then their task was to match themselves to a partner with whom they were equally matched in terms of attractiveness. And so we see where the problem is here, because for the men, you've got way too many 7, 8s, and 9s, and for the women, you've got way too many 2, 3s, and 4s, and you're going to have a large pocket of people who are feeling mismatched because they see how that they've ranked each other, and there's an inconsistency with their expectation. The men were thinking, "Wow, this woman is very attractive, and yet she's ranked herself a 2," and this woman's like, "Whoa, this dude has ranked himself a 7 or an 8, and he's obviously a 3 or a 4." Again, very subjective measure here, right? Because everybody has a different sort of parameter for what beauty is and what attractiveness is, and we're not going to have a philosophical conversation about aesthetics and all of that, but we get the picture. The point being, it's messy. It's messy, and this memory, I think, is a really good way of highlighting the complexity of what society tells us and what we tell ourselves about who we are and what we should do and how we should look. That's it for this episode. Thanks for listening. If you have comments, questions, or feedback, or maybe a suggestion for a topic in the future, feel free to contact me on social media or by email, finloslives@gmail.com. Or you can leave me a voice message via the SpeakPipe app at the website, finloslives.com. If you like this episode or any of the content, please share it with somebody. I look forward to our next conversation. Or even better, at least X, Y, or Z is not happening, right? The silver lining approach, like, yeah, you might be overweight, but at least you know how to cook good.